going on, everyone, and welcome into the fourth episode of Quick Nine presented by the Odds Breakers. On this week's episode, we have a very special guest, Brian Kirschner, a man of many talents. You can find him on Twitter at Brian Kirschner. His weekly articles on the on oddcheckerscom, and of course, the host of Tap and Birdie. Brian, welcome to the show.
Patrick, I'm glad we could do this tonight. I always enjoy going on podcasts, and I haven't been on one in a while, so I'm excited to chat with you tonight.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking the time. So without further ado, we'll get into it. Won't really dive into your personal life too much, but you mind giving me kind of a brief overview per se about your introduction to gambling and then kind of how you narrowed in on golf betting?
Yeah, so I've always loved to golf. I've always played golf, and I kind of got into betting late. I don't really know when people usually start gambling, but I started betting in college. Like as like a broke kid. Like my friend had a local book, and like I was like, oh shit, like this is because it wasn't legal in New York yet. So it was always fun to bet on local books, like betting small stakes and stuff. And then that was kind of like around the time COVID happened. And then I think around the 2020 US Open, that Bryson won, that was the first time I really like invested a decent amount of money into a golf tournament. I was like betting a few outrights, top fives, like didn't know what I was doing, but it was just fun. I realized that it was very fun to bet on. And then, wasn't super into every single week. And then I think it really started at the 2021 Masters with that Decky one. I like posted my card on Twitter. And it just kind of went from there. I started posting my card every week, started following everybody in the industry. And that's kind of how it started, because I realized golf was easily the best sport to bet on. And I really thought the community on Twitter was great, and it just kind of has been going ever since.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of odds, if trying to catch a long shot, you can't beat it. Unless you're trying to cook up 18 parlays on Sunday to get 16-1 odds, nothing comes close in terms of that. But
if I did my if every single week I just bet like $500 on the NFL or MLB, well, I mean, I would be broke, genuinely. And I lose again, in golf betting, I lose most weeks.
Yeah.
But if I gambled on other sports like I do golf, like I would be broke, genuinely.
I think that's fair too. And the worst part too of the NFL too is you have 7 days, obviously, with golf, a little less kind of once that last putt drops on Sunday, you're looking at the odds board. But yeah, it's one of the toughest sports to bet too. And I've definitely, golf betting seems a lot more up my alley than trying to predict winners on Sunday.
Yeah.
So you started Tap and Birdie in 2021. I guess, was this kind of your first experience podcasting, or kind of how did you decide to create or wanted to start a podcast?
Yeah, honestly, I liked a lot of people's podcasts in the industry that were people that just talked about betting on golf. And I'm like, I love talking about betting on golf. So I was invited on a few pods, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. Like, I'll just start my own and just have guests on and talk about betting on golf, which is really enjoyable. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy going on other people's podcasts and talking about it. Like, I genuinely just wanted a platform to talk about it. And that's just kind of how it started. I've never really, been in the podcast space before. But with the thing about that, like golf betting and like people are like, oh, you have a podcast? I'm like, it's really like a show, and it's for like a very niche audience. Like a lot of people would have podcasts that, like anyone can listen to. Like, oh yeah, like you mean, I have a podcast. It's about, I don't know what people podcast about, but unless you give a shit about golf, you're not going to listen to my podcast. Like, there's no reason, really.
No. Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of just like a hobby. It's fun. I have a lot of friends in the industry. Like, it's just something fun I like to do. And if 5 people listen to it or 500 people listen to it, it makes no difference to me, truthfully.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even the brief kind of period that I've been a part of it, the amount of people and the amount of interest in golf betting is skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the better markets to get into and kind of the undersaturated sports betting markets early. So obviously with the podcast, there's kind of ups and downs of trying to figure out your voice and your show and kind of what exactly you want to do here. Is there any kind of information, whether you were on someone else's podcast or just talking to someone in the industry, that kind of like, well, that's a really great point, and I kind of never thought of that before?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like I said before, I don't live and die by my podcast. It's something fun I like to do. But in my opinion, the key to a successful one, or one that people want to listen to, is you have to be entertaining. You have to have good guests on. You have to have people that people want to listen to on. And no one, I mean, I'm sure there's a small market, but I just feel like going on and just talking about your model and like course fits and like stuff like that, and your like units and how much you're betting, like I don't really think people like that. And
No.
I think it's more, the success is more due to being entertaining, again, having people you like on, giving honest opinions, giving gut opinions, having hot takes. And what the thing I've realized about golf betting is that it's for a casual like viewer that like bets golf every week. You take things from different podcasts. You hear someone say something about one golfer that you like, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to bet that guy. And then another podcast, they talk up this guy, and you really like that. And then they talk up a guy, and you're like, that's the worst bet I've ever fucking heard in my life. Like, that's the thing about golf betting, is that you can take a lot from a lot of different podcasts and shows and articles and kind of come up with your own card and come to your own conclusions and then win money that way. So again, like I said, I don't care if 5 people or 500 listen to it. This is not my career. Yeah. I'm not like gonna make a bunch of money off my podcast one day. It's not gonna happen. I just enjoy doing it, and anyone that listens to it, I'm extremely grateful to, and I love it. And people that are like every Tuesday, like, you listen to my show, like, that's awesome. Another thing I would say is that don't just have guests on to have guests on. Like, have people you genuinely enjoyed listening to. If you don't like potting with somebody and you don't think it's like a good show, but they're like popular or whatever, like, don't do that. That would be my opinion. Like, now I only have my friends on and people that I genuinely want to talk to on every single week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think you made a hilarious point too, which is like, if you listen to 2 separate golf podcasts a week, you could have one guy that touts it as his favorite play of the week. Yeah. And another one that's like, why would you even consider this guy in this course, given his course history or whatever, and list a bunch of stats. So it's pretty funny kind of when you compare the amount of different shows. But recently this year, you started on the oddcheckerscom, your articles, where you kind of pick 2 guys out a week that you post about and you kind of do a little write-up. How did that kind of come to be? And then is it more entertaining, or kind of what are your thoughts on that compared to podcasting?
I don't. Honestly, writing's tough for me. If I did this like full time, yeah, it'd be fine. But
yeah,
I have a regular 9-to-5 job, and I've just gotten more and more responsibility recently. And it's been harder because the thing about writing is that if I had to do it by like Wednesday, it'd be fine, but I need it out like Monday morning. And a lot of weeks, it's totally fine. Most weeks, there's 2 guys I'm like, yo, I'm betting. But for like the majors and like the players and like stuff like that, sometimes it's like I need a little bit of time to kind of digest and figure out who I'm betting. And I don't want to be, because I would never write someone up that I wasn't going to bet. That's like my number one rule. So it's tougher because I have to have it out early, and I think it's important to kind of digest the week and not just bet someone super early Monday morning. So I preferred potting. Like the writing is like more like you make more money off it. But I used to write for like Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and then They offered me a job to work like once a week and write the article. But I think I don't think I'm like a great writer. I don't think I'm some unbelievable writer. I think I'm a better podcast host and I'm better to talk about it than write my guys up. So going forward, I'm would prefer doing the podcast. Honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to do the Odd Checker article this upcoming season for the reasons I just talked about.
Yeah.
So I kind of got to figure that out. Kind of take my real job that pays me well. Kind of give that a little bit more say now.
Yeah, the real job that pays all of our gambling allows us to gamble pretty much. You kind of got to worry about that one first. Obviously, I think yourself included, a lot of others in the golf space has kind of become avid golfers, given the sport, or just started golfing at an early age, and that's kind of what got themselves into it. So it's a three-parter here. Your favorite major, your favorite tournament outside of major, can be a course, doesn't have to be a tournament, and then favorite course you personally played.
So favorite major for me, I'll go Open just because I hit the winner at the last two Opens. And again, working a fucking 9 to 5, I can't sit and just watch golf all day. But for the Open, I could wake up at 4 and watch all before work. So I like the Open. I've had success there. So I'll go the Open there.
Okay.
Outside of major, I'll go Travelers just because it's the closest tournament to me. Yeah. And I usually go. And it's a great viewing experience. So I'll go Travelers. Course I've played personally, I've been lucky enough to play a decent amount of country clubs, nothing crazy or anything. It's like the best course I've ever played, like highest rated, is Oak Hill, but it was literally the hardest course I've ever played in my entire life. Favorite course, shout out Andy Lack. I'll go El Cab in LA. That's Andy's country club. That would be a course I would just play it every day. Like I would love to be a member there. It's very playable. So I will go El Cab in LA. That's probably my favorite course that I've played.
Yeah, oddly enough, obviously you're fourth guest here. First one to say the Open Championship.
Really? Yeah. I like the Open. I like the waking up early, and I like the no work, having like watching it before work.
Yeah, and you're Ben of the Travelers was there last year, but I mean that viewing experience from 17 to 18 is just incredible. You kind of get lost.
Where are you based out of? Where do you live?
I'm out of Boston, so it's the closest one for me as well. But yeah, and Hasselbauer too last week said Oak Hill, so you're almost went.
No, we played it together.
That makes more sense.
Actually hilarious. But just because I'm like I'm like a 16, 17 handicap. Like I broke a 90 a few times. And it was like actually it was impossible for a high handicapper. And this guy that plays all the top courses in America, he just put it out on Oak Hill and said it was the second hardest course he's ever played and talked about how hard it is. And he's like a scratch. So I felt a lot better about myself. And also I say like -3 was like T4 there. When you have the best golfers in the world and -3 over 4 days is good for a top 5 finish, you have a pretty tough track.
Yeah, I mean, and the conditions weren't the easiest either. I was out there Friday too, and you could just see guys struggling as well. The that par 3 that was like 250 played a few days too. That was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of how you approach a tournament, are you a guy that kind of prices out the odds the week before? Or do you kind of do your research before and then kind of verify with the odds board? And then in terms of stats, like, do you have a preference on any one of the major websites out there?
Yeah. So it's like, first off, just easy question. I use Fantasy National, to be honest. That for me, I don't make models. For me, that is the easiest for me. If I want to say, how did a golfer play at this tournament? How has a golfer played recently? Like, that's easiest for me. So I like Fantasy National. I subscribe to Rick Run Good. I like their stuff for like the Euro Tour and Live and Andy's articles. So I use both of those, but I like Fantasy National. It's tough. I think doing this for a while, you kind of get a sense of the course and who you want to bet.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have an idea of what certain golfers do well. And I kind of had that general sentiment going into a tournament of kind of matching up the course fit and the golfers that I think fit that and are playing well. But I could bet a guy solely because I see something in the numbers. I could bet solely a guy because I've been betting him recently and I don't want to hop off. I could bet a guy solely because my friend's on him and I trust him. I could bet it solely because, like, I know, like, just an example, like, I know Keegan Bradley is good on difficult conditions and on long, difficult driving courses.
Yeah.
And he's played well at the Zozo before. So, like, I'm going to bet him at the Zozo. And then there's obviously times where I'm just like, this guy's mispriced, so I'm going to bet him. So again, there's so many different reasonings why you could bet a certain golfer, but I am certainly more on the like ball knowledge than the numbers. I very rarely bet someone because I see something in the numbers. Other than like recent form, or like he gained 10 strokes on approach last week. Like I don't really model stuff out.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. And you've been the fourth guy to say Fantasy National as well. And I think it's great, especially if you don't run a model or whatever. I think it's the perfect website for that too. And in terms
you
of
can eat if you on Fantasy National, if you were like, I just want to see who's like a good long iron player and putter on bet, that's easy. But they're all good. But I do like Fantasy National.
Yeah, it's funny too. You have guys too of he's priced at 40 to 1. You're like, well, I had him at 38 to 1.5 to bet him this week. It's like it's a 2 cent advantage isn't really going to do much here, but sure, like whatever, according to your model, I guess that's a value play, even though he's missed the cut the last 3 times at this event. He's lost strokes on approach the last 5. So everyone's got their own approach though. But for constructing your card too, this is where it's gotten interesting. Do you start with your outrights, placements, or first round leaders first?
So this is just like an absolutely hilarious question, and I love it because my friends and I always make jokes about like your return and like your ROI. And it's just like a big inside joke with all my friends. Like 7-8x. So you putting that is just hilarious, and I love it because so first thing is outrights. Like first thing, I'm trying to get to 7x, and so I bet 7x. Like that is my return. Maybe I would be a little bit below 7, maybe a little bit above, but I would never post anything really below like 6.7 or something like that. And honestly, my opinion is that I'm never like, oh, I'm just going to be like this week and post 8-9x, because you never want to be in a situation where you had room on your card and someone that you could have bet won. You should just, if you're doing it seriously, bet 7x every single week. It doesn't matter if you like it or don't. So yeah, I'm trying to get my outright card done usually by Wednesday morning. Sometimes it's done Monday afternoon. Sometimes it's done Wednesday morning. It just really depends. I don't really bet placements, to be honest. Like, I'm totally comfortable losing $500 every single week. Obviously, I need to like hit, but I'm fine losing that. And then it's like, I don't even think of it as a loss, but I don't think of it as a loss because it's more of an investment. And I know when I win, it will cover a bunch of weeks. So to bet all that and then bet a bunch of placements, it's tough because if I whiff on a week, I'm fine losing 500, but then I like nuke some guy top 20. Like I might bet a long shot top 5, top 10. Like that's it. And then first round leader, my favorite bet, that is a Wednesday night. Like outright card's done. I'm home from the gym on Wednesdays. I open up the first round leader stats, open up fantasy. Like that's a Wednesday night last thing. No stats, like just kind of gut feel. But I am debating. Do you bet first round leaders?
I don't. I usually I've done for the past 2 years. I've done outrights and placements. I haven't dabbled in the first round leader market, but I think that
I
that
mean,
is something I want to get
just like a
into.
losing $100 every week, but it's just
Yeah,
like a great sweat. But I'm kind of I don't know the answer, but I don't know if it's better to just bet your outright card first round leader or bet kind of your gut.
separate. Yeah,
It's tough because I don't know, because there's been times where like went back-to-back weeks, Wyndham Clark at the US Open. I was like, I love Wyndham Clark. I'm not going to go on a whole rant about Wyndham Clark at the US Open, but I was like, I like Wyndham Clark. He's a good course fit, and he's like a fucking shoo-in for first round leader. He's not going to win. He's not going to win, but he's someone I think could cop out first round leader. And he's like 2 strokes short first round leader, but he fucking wins. Next week, Keegan Bradley. I'm like, Keegan, Travelers, you bet him in the Northeast. He's a first round leader guy. Worst beat of the year, truly. Like Keegan, first round leader at the Travelers. He first round leader, just short, and then wins. But then there's also been times where like Tommy Fleetwood at the Open. That's a true like, yo, Tommy Fleetwood cannot win, but he could be first round leader. So it's tough. It's an art. It's a first round leader. It's an art. You have to kind of know it, but that is my absolute favorite bet. And it's just such a fun sweat on Thursday when you're at work.
yeah.
And it's like every single shot matters so much. Like if someone misses an 8-footer, but you have him first round leader, it's like the end of the world, truly. Like that, because it's not like outright Thursday. It's like whatever, but it's like, yo, you need everything to go right on a Thursday. But yeah, love my first round leader bets.
It's funny that you mentioned like the constructing the cards with the outrights and first round leaders. Are they the same? Because it's almost as passionate of a debate on golf Twitter, where you have some guys in a hard stance of 7x return and then other guys at an 8x return, and you're never going to change either of their minds.
Yeah, and then there's some people that just bet like crazy cards, and it pisses me off. It doesn't. It's fine. It's not like we're all in like some competition.
No,
but when you see someone bet someone at like 10-1 and 2 guys in the 20s, it's like, yo, like it just, but some people don't take it serious. Like some people, it's not as serious, but I feel like the more you bet and like the more, like if you actually bet to win a substantial amount, it's, you just know you can't do that. But if you're betting like $10-20 on a golfer, like who cares if you're like 5x, 4x, like you just won. So it just, that debate is really more how serious you take it and how much you debate.
It's the guys who, like you mentioned before, the 3 picks, kind of the top 10s or whatever. I noticed that's a lot more of the people who only bet kind of the 4 majors of the year and are like, yeah, this is golf betting. And it's like, well, if you're going to bet every week and it's not really sustainable.
Yeah, that's why I don't have it. That's why I don't.
Yeah.
If some people do it, like they only bet a few times, but it does piss me off when people that like have followings and like post cards and stuff post like a ridiculous card. Like it just like everyone would do that. You shouldn't do that, but you can't change people. It's okay.
That's fair. Obviously, speaking of locations, kind of one of the main mistakes common bettors make. But do you kind of have any others off the top of your head that you see often?
I think the biggest thing would be you have to kind of remove, there's exceptions, but you kind of have to remove this guy can't win. I don't know. I feel like the last 2 majors kind of proved that in terms of anyone can win any tournament other than like Tommy Fleetwood or something. Like you kind of have to think anyone, or Jordan Smith, like you can't say he's just not going to win an event like this. I feel like that hurts you more. Like Lucas Glover at St. Jude, it's like he's not going to win he's not going to win an event right after he just won. Or like Kirk Kitayama's not going to win the API. He's just not going to win. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you just have to bet guys that make sense, and you just have to hope that they play well. Like, honestly, Harman at the Open, like, if someone texted me, who should I bet for the Open, I wouldn't have told you Brian Harman. But he made a bunch of sense and he was at a good number, so I just bet him and he won.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like under the impression of Wyndham Clark just won the U.S. Open. He was playing Punta Cana like 5 months ago. You kind of have to just say anyone can win any tournament. There are exceptions, but anyone can win any tournament. You can't think someone's not going to win just because they're like a loser in your head or it's too big an event. That is my biggest advice, I would say, after this year.
Yeah, and I think for a while too, it was always a superstition or at least preconceived notion of if a guy kind of you don't expect wins one week, he's definitely not going to win the next week. And I think that trend's kind of been broken in the past few years almost of anyone's live pretty much any tournament, it seems.
Yeah.
All right, last question here. Advice for first-time golf bettors. Anything you got here?
Yeah, I would say bet outrights. I would, try and keep it in the 7 to 8 amount and have I want to win $500 and bet all of them to win $500. You don't bet the same amount on every single golfer. You bet to win the same amount on every single golfer, like in the same range. Yeah. Like that's kind of my biggest advice, I would say. And bet who you want to bet. Bet who you feel comfortable betting. If you listen to a podcast and someone says something and you like it, bet it. That's my opinion. I personally think that you should bet things that you can live with at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with betting a guy because you've been on him recently and you don't want to hop off now. That's fine. It doesn't always have to be super technical. You could also just bet guys you like and bet guys that you want to see win because sometimes that works out as well.
Yeah, I'd agree to all those points. Last but not least, obviously, thank you for joining me on the show. You can find Brian, obviously, at his weekly show, Tappin' Birdie, and his articles, which may or may not be coming, I guess, now. Yes. Breaking news on the Odds Checkers. So I guess stay tuned for that little teaser for the people. But thanks again for taking the time and joining us today.
No, I greatly appreciate it. I'm definitely looking forward to sharing this out and hopefully getting you some more followers. And I like the content you put out. So I appreciate it. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to your articles for this upcoming year.
Awesome. Thanks again. Well, thanks to all the listeners. We appreciate listening. This has been another episode of Quick 9.